Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Rana Maqbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we will be taking a look at two important stories. The first is a reference to the political situation in the country, particularly, of course, what has happened with regard to the former Prime Minister Imran Khan and him awaiting the arrest back at his place in Lahore. Something, of course, that has been much talked about. There were a lot of supporters gathered outside yet again to avoid this particular arrest, and we also had statements coming in from the PTI leadership, Farah, saying that the PTI chairman is not available, and something, of course, which was put under question after he addressed the party workers from the same place. And because of that, there is a lot of discussions with regards to how this particular issue is going to now proceed. There are a number of cases that the PTI chairman is currently going through, and many of them, of course, are going ahead simultaneously. He has had bails from various cases, but in the Dosha Khana reference, the court has upheld the non-bailable arrest warrants. However, despite the police actually going to his residence in Lahore, the PTI chairman was able to avoid arrest. Later, speaking to a press conference, the Interior Minister Rana also talked about how this is not the government's intent, nor is the government's will to arrest the PTI chairman. In fact, the government is going to respect whatever the court decides, and it is up to the courts to go ahead and proceed with whatever is the legal standing now moving forward. He talked, of course, about the way that the PTI chairman's conduct is affecting the proceedings, and then, of course, the economy and other relationships that exist with Afghanistan and the rest of the country, and the spike in terrorist activities that we are currently facing. He also, of course, talked about the many important aspects of the PTI chairman in the past as well, and because of this, we're going to be taking a look at what this means in terms of the very many number of cases that the PTI chairman is currently dealing with and how this is going to impact. There's also, of course, a development coming in from the former Chief Justice, Aqib Nisar, who has given a statement with regards to the PTI chairman asking for help in the cases that he is undergoing, and said that he denied any help and told him to respect the institutions, respect the judiciary and the law. And he also referred to the previous verdict where the PTI chairman was declared Sadiq and Amin, and said that that was only in a single aspect that this was declared and not in the other aspects. And so putting a question mark perhaps there as well on the verdict, which was supposed to be a particular badge of the PTI chairman's credibility and character. So we're going to be taking a look at all of these developments and what this means in terms of the future, and of course the PTI's leadership moving forward as well. We know that the Jail Baro Tehreek had been abandoned by the PTI chairman following the Supreme Court's announcement regarding elections in KP and Punjab, and he was of course going to be starting his particular campaigns from the weekend. The Interior Minister also spoke about how this is a decision coming in from the ECP, and if the ECP puts a ban on rallies, on the people going ahead and talking ill of people who are not involved in many different references, and then of course blaming or putting out fingers on someone's character, then of course the election can proceed and it's going to be really easy. But without that, of course, there still remains uncertainty as to what is going to happen. So that is going to be the focus of our first segment of the show today with regards to the current political situation. In the next one, we're going to be taking a look at the counterterrorism dialogue that has kicked off between the US and Pakistan as part of the, of course, much awaited re-enhancement of the relationship and the strategic partnership between the US and Pakistan, and particularly with regards to counterterrorism efforts. It was extremely important to see what sort of a relationship this is going to take and proceed. This is, of course, something that still remains to be seen, but perhaps the two-day dialogue is something that is going to help us in this regard, and is being taken as a positive sign towards cooperation by the US, and something that puts to bed the speculations regarding US abandonment in the fight against terrorism for Pakistan. Earlier also in the recent briefings by the US State Department, we also heard statements coming in that the threat by the TTP to Pakistan could be possibly a threat to the US in the future as well. But what this means on ground and what sort of cooperation can possibly exist now between the two countries is something that we'll try and understand in the show today. Thursday. So for this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farooq Patafi. We've also been joined by our guests online. For our first segment, we've been joined by Mr. Rana Maqbool Ahmad, who's a Senator PMLN, and we've also been joined by Barrister Safi Ghori, who's a legal expert and also a political analyst. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being a part of the discussion today. And let me start with you, Barrister Safi. The discussions, of course, around the PTI chairman's cases are many, and it's perhaps hard to keep track of the number of cases and the number of proceedings that have been going on. And because of that, it puts to question a lot of the aspects of certain proceedings that the PTI chairman has to undergo. We, of course, know that one of the things that was cited by Mr. Fawad Chaudhry also is that the PTI chairman has protected bail from the Islamabad High Court, but it seems that that's from a different case and not the Toshakhana reference case. Could you also help us understand what this means legally in terms of where the PTI chairman now stands, considering that the Islamabad police went to arrest him, but he evaded arrest, and that this bail was not part of the Toshakhana reference? So what this means now in legal terms?
Thank you so much, Sana. And the law in this particular scenario is extremely clear. I think once again, what we see is PTI trying to subvert the law, trying to misinform the public as to what the law is. Section 75, subsection 2 of the Code of Criminal Procedure very clearly states that a warrant of arrest can only be cancelled by the court of its issuance, that is, the court that issued those arrest warrants, or it has to be executed. There are only two possibilities this could happen. Now, instead, what we see is PTI workers creating tremendous hue and cry, talking about how there's been tremendous injustice. And we also saw PTI lawyers go up to the Lahore High Court and paste their bail applications. There is no bail in this case. It's a simple arrest warrant. The warrant states that he must appear before the court. And if he does not appear before the court, then he may be arrested. So to try and apply for a bail is absolutely incorrect and it is against the law. There is one thing that he could get, which is a transitory bail, in which he goes before the Lahore High Court, states that he needs time to appear before the Islamabad court, which has issued the arrest warrants, state why he needs that extra time, and if he's given a transitory bail, then he may have sufficient time to evade arrest, go to Islamabad, and present himself there. Now, this is something that has applied in every leader's case. We have seen this happening to President Zardari, former President Zardari. We've seen it happen to former President Nawaz Sharif, Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. So all of these leaders of the country had applied for transitory bails, went before the issuing courts to try to get the warrants cancelled. In some cases, the warrant was not cancelled because sufficient cause was not presented and they were arrested. Or otherwise, it is the court's discretion to cancel the arrest. And in this case, the court would have. But it is Imran Khan who continues to evade. On the one hand, he talks about how there is justice in Pakistan, about how, for example, European countries where if court states something, everybody is equal before them. He keeps giving examples of ministers and prime ministers of the Catholic Kingdom of Norway and how they are submitting themselves before the rule of law. And then when it comes to himself, he runs away to the neighbor's house to try and evade arrest. And this is just hilarious at this stage. And I don't know what the PTI strategy is and how this is helping on to anyone. In fact, to add to the fuel, he actively stated that the court was correct in summoning him, but it was correct in summoning all other because they were corrupt and he's not. And add to that also the fact that he stated publicly that he now wants a massive public gathering on Wednesday to try and stop this from happening. This is a crime, obstruction of justice. 100% FIR. So all I see is things getting worse. I just see, he's making these institutions increasingly controversial. PTI workers are buying into it. Many members of the public think that perhaps some injustice going on. And as a lawyer, I feel that that's just sad because this is not the case when other leaders were getting arrested. Now, at least subvert the law to this extent.
Right, all right. Barrister Safi, we'll come back to you and I'll ask perhaps a little bit more explanation at the end because we were experiencing some trouble with the audio. But I'll come back to that as well. And let me also include in the discussion, Rana Saab, in terms of what the Interior Minister has said, Rana Saab, we have seen that the sentiment from the government is that they are going to let the proceedings as they are, and they're not interested in the arrest, and they've made it very clear that there is no political angle to this. Of course, this is something that is being played by the political leadership of the PTI a lot in terms of how the cases are proceedings. But it seems much, as Ambassador Safi was also pointing out, much that is being a cause of trouble is at the hands of the PTI chairman and the party leadership themselves, and how they're responding to the legal cases. But despite that, we see that there is perhaps still a lot of the things that the PTI chairman has been able to get away with in the past, perhaps still is, in terms of how this all is proceedings. What do you think about the way that now, when we see moving forward, so many times the PTI chairman has been able to avoid court appearances, that is going to eventually impact or affect the way the court proceedings will now move forward?
Irrespective of what has happened, I want to indicate the danger and the risk of lives of the people, his supporters. This situation, when he gathers, as per his understanding, multitudes of people around him, everywhere, around his house, and once he moves outside, goes to different premises of courts, it's extremely dangerous. He should realize that this crowd is vulnerable, and any rowdy element or saboteurs or the terrorists, they can penetrate into the crowd and create a great situation, dangerous situation. He should realize, and this game should be over. Time and again it's being repeated, and gimmicks are being repeated. And I personally think the government must come down with a heavy hand and tell them to behave, and wherever he goes, they should give the list of the people, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 who will get into the premises or the courtroom. Nobody else should be allowed to get in. And there should not be crowds or gathering outside the court, because sometimes it will entail a lot of grave situation. This is, as a student of this science of law and order, I really, for sure I feel they should revise their policy. As far as the massive extraordinary relief which is being extended by the honorable courts to him, that should stop forthwith. All right, the government has said that they don't want to arrest him. It was only for the compliance of the non-bailable warrant of the accused. He was supposed to appear. So instead of applying for protective bail, or as my friend was telling, transitory bail, he tried to escape the situation, which created bitter feelings. And I think now he has to finally appear before all the courts. He can't escape this. Therefore, this drama should be over. It's already causing a lot of destabilization unnecessarily. This storm in the teacup must stop, because it's not going to give any results to him. But I understand his game is not as impressive as it used to be. No, he should understand, and he should put his feet on ground instead of just living in a world of hallucination. This is what my suggestion is.
All right. Farooq, what do you make of the statement coming in from the former Chief Justice as well? We keep on talking about how there is relief perhaps given to the PTI chairman from the courts and whatnot. And now we have a former Chief Justice making a claim that the PTI chairman has asked for help. What does that mean in terms of the value that that has in the way that the proceedings have gone, or what the PTI chairman is asking for?
Right, Sana, before I actually talk about former Chief Justice, let me also talk about PTI itself, because for a party that was conceived as Tehreek-e-Insaf, that is Movement for Justice, and whose leader Imran Khan Sahab never forgets to remind us that societies that were destroyed had two systems of justice, one for the rich, one for the poor. And this time it seems that in his own sphere of influence, there are three levels or standards of justice. One for the ordinary mortals like you and I, the second one for the affluent because they have been, this is an elitist society, and the third one for Imran Khan himself. There are two ways to avoid the cases. First, whenever there is any case against him, he actually appears on television, decries it, and says that he is being victimized, and then he comes up with a very elaborate conspiracy theory. As we proceed further, I'm going to actually offer a counter conspiracy theory as well.
Okay.
But at this moment, regarding the way he is handled, one, through conspiracy theories and his media influence, he tries to undermine the rule of law. And that is not all. Whenever there is a patient in front of a court, or whenever he's either summoned, or then there, like the recent episode, forces are sent to actually arraign him, what happens? He uses mob as human shield. And that again shows you how much he regards the rule of law. For mortals like you and I, we were told that if you are driving on the road and the authorities stop you, first thing you have to do is cooperate with them. Then, of course, if there is any kind of violation of your right, you can actually escalate it to the concerned authorities. But first, you cooperate. That doesn't seem to be happening in Imran Khan Saab's case. I don't understand how he actually sees those optics playing out, because I think that this is horrible. Horrible, these are horrible optics, and it is going to eventually undermine the whole concept of Tehreek-e-Insaf or movement of justice. Having said that, now the former Chief Justice. I'm glad that he was the first to speak, because I think the kind of reports we keep on hearing, and then we keep on hearing that there are tapes also about him actually using his influence to lobby for Imran Khan. With that kind of evidence or speculation in the air, while he has spoken, and his first reaction is essentially denial, but what can we do with his words, which were actually stated in presence of many people, where he said that I'm all out for Imran Khan. And regarding his past judgment, regarding Sadiq Amin being only on one aspect, or regarding one aspect, here's something very interesting. What are we playing at? Are we playing a game of 50 shades? Because Sadiq, either you are Sadiq Amin or you are not. So if you say that he was Sadiq Amin in
On
this
one
aspect and
that's
not
true.
in that one,
Yes.
then you have lost the plot. I'm sorry, he says that he's going to, now he's not going to talk to the media, and he's going to write a book that will be published posthumously. My problem is I want to see that book, because I think that there are going to be truckload of confessions there.
Absolutely, and that's important, and of course we need that sooner rather than later as well, in terms of how we're going to proceed. But Barrister Safi, the understanding here, of course, when we take a look at all of these cases and the way that the PTI chairman has been dealt with, or the way the perception exists in terms of the way the court proceedings are going forward, why is it that when we have such obvious answers to some of the ways that the conduct has been by the PTI chairman, that there aren't as obvious decisions being taken in terms of the consequences of it? I understand that we talk about the relief, but in terms of actual measures, it seems that a lot of that is also being played as perhaps something that needs more clarity. Is that the case, that there needs to be more clarity, or is it just that it's an obvious thing but it's not happening?
I think it's a very good question, Sana, and the answer is quite obvious. We know what the law is. The law is not being implemented because of certain fear factors that the courts have. Um, I think here's what's happening right now. This is just my own perception of the matter. This is not what the law is. The courts are responsible, at least partly, for the law and order situation in the country. And nobody wants to think that they would be responsible for causing mass disruption within the country. And there is an impression that Imran Khan has given, and the impression is that if something were to happen to him, that would be the red line for the party workers. And the party workers would go all out. They would maybe turn into a massive mob. They would start burning things. And PTI gives off that very violent vibe. People continue to think that PTI can turn into a very violent party, like we have seen in the past some other political parties. Now, this may or may not happen. It's a guess, but I think a lot of the judges are fearful of being the ones who would be responsible for causing such an event to happen. And
But
so
but
this is what it is.
but should that even be a guiding factor in terms of legal proceedings?
Not at all. Not at all. Of course not. But judges are humans. And just like you and I would be fearful of the kind of legacy that we are leaving behind, what the rest of our family would think of us, what everybody else would blame us for. So I think judges too, in the same manner, continue to think that if they do not or are not responsible for something that could cause a public outrage, they would continue to preserve good legacy. So it's just cowardice, really, at the end of the day, because
Or
the law is to be applied equally to everyone. It's very clear, as Pitafi Saab just said, that it's not being applied to PTI. So if it's not being applied to PTI, there are other reasons, and those are societal and social reasons, not legal reasons.
All right, Rana Saab, if that's the case, when we take a look at the consequences and perhaps the potential violence that can exist or the kind of ruckus that can be created, which the PTI chairman keeps pointing towards, especially from his party workers, in case anything happens to him, is that something that the government is even considering or is fearful of, even if we don't take the courts into account, in terms of the way that we have seen since his ouster, the kind of statements and the kind of actions that have been taken? We keep on hearing, even you have repeatedly said that there needs to be consequence, but there hasn't been still any action taken, and it seems that this is something that is being ignored and is letting it take its course by the government, and not something that's actively being investigated or taken action against.
Yes, it's absolutely correct observation. There's a lot of reluctance and inhibition in proceeding against him. Proceeding against him according to law, both is in his interest for his security, as far as his threat to his whatever he thinks is, it will be very, very useful for him as well, and that lacking fear would be over if he is properly proceeded against. Number two, the role of the courts. Courts should not think on these lines that their action will be will be entailing these repercussions. That is not courts' baby. Courts will have to act strictly according to law, and they should not be giving concession on every issue. Number three is the government. Government must, they should put their foot down, and they should enforce law effectively and meaningfully, because this double-mindedness is going to be disastrous for the country finally. They should clinch this situation effectively right today. But this has Professor Rana, Mr. Padafi analyzed the conduct of an honorable judge, that saying Sadek and Amin. There is no word of Sadek in the Constitution. They really try to make it more ornamental, Sadek and Amin. I may go to one episode in half a minute, less than half a minute. Mr. Altaf Gaur writes in his book that he learned that Justice Munir is not well, he's severely ill. He traveled all the way from, he says, from Pindi to Lahore, and his house was behind the Civil Service Academy. He said that he went to his house, sought the permission. They said the judge is not feeling well, he is in the bed. Okay, he has given the permission to go to him. He went to him. The first answer the first question he put to Altaf Gaur, Mr. Justice Munir, Altaf, okay, everything, maybe I don't know, but I am repenting over what has been done with the Maulvi Tumizuddin case. What can be done at this stage? Altaf Gaur said, you pray to God forgiveness. There is no other solution to the problem. And the honorable judge, with that name, unfortunately, passed away after 3 days. So this is the lesson for all the honorable judges. They have the role to play for justice and fair play in the country, and they must strictly adhere to the ethics and morality of justice. Then there will not be any repentance. Honorable Judge says, after my death there will be, what is the fear to him? He should come forward. If he has done something wrong, he should go for confessions, because confession will purge him. And why to keep everything to his chest now, even now at this stage? And everything will be published after that. What does it mean? For God's sake, have a heart. Come forward before the people. That will help you in cathartic effect on your mind and body. So he's in pain, looks to be, because he's repenting what he has done. So let's not do such things for which we have to repent afterwards.
Absolutely. And Rana Sahab, perhaps that's something not restricted to just judges, and this kind of accountability that perhaps should exist to all of us and all of the political decision makers and leaders as well in terms of the actions that they're taking. But Farooq, I also want to understand when we take a look at the issue of consequence in terms of the PTI and its workers, in the past we have seen that perhaps the kind of street power that existed hasn't been there, and we of course see a large number of people at the residence trying to prevent the arrest of the PTI chairman. But really, in terms of an actual consequence, do you think that this is really something that is a consideration in terms of if something has had to happen, or if the court's proceedings go against the PTI chairman, that there will be a national level problem that the government will have to face?
Right, Sarah. First word that actually comes is attached to consequences. What exactly is it? Accountability, right? And amazingly, Bilawal Bhutto Zardari actually brings up something very fascinating he did in one of his speeches, that why is it that the biggest champions of National Accountability Bureau are the people who fall outside its purview? Judges and retired army officers, right? Why is it that they keep on championing it? And I think it totally makes sense. If you are not facing consequences or brunt of that body, then you can actually go on building up conspiracy theories and pumping in as much air into this facade as possible. Having said that, let me regarding this human shield issue. Of course, when it comes to courts, there must be some realization that naqs-e-amal or disruption of law and order can also take place, and that can, in retrospect, reflect negatively. But having said that, I mean, in the past also, there were umpteen people who used the same tactics. But there, the courts were really adamant that these things, the rule of law should carry, right? And it has been happening in the past many a times when the police kept on saying that there is going to be this kind of consequences, but the courts were insisting that you actually take action. I can go into examples as well. But it seems that the system still is treating Imran Khan as a ladla, or as the favored son, because repeatedly we have seen that he gets concessions where none could even expect to get it. And then we saw this matter of special suo moto, where half the bench was actually crying out loud that things shouldn't be done this way. But the concessions were given, and the way, relief, remember, when it came to the office of governor of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, it was the bench actually stated, or the majority did, whatever passes for majority, that the governor has erred and actually outstepped his bounds. But no similar language was present for the president, whose lawyer had actually confessed on record that in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa's case, he had actually erred and actually violated his mandate. So there seems to be some kind of special treatment meted out to Imran Khan Sahab. I don't know what exactly the dynamics are. But regarding conspiracy theories also, can I get 1 minute to actually give you one very amazing thing that I heard today, and this comes from certain quarters of powerful, influential people in the country. that Pakistan is in the middle of two clashing world orders, right? One is, the Biden order, that is a prevalent order since 1945. And the other one is Trumpian world order, which was dominated by Putin and Narendra Modi's influence. So what exactly is happening, and this actually is a reference to the way IMF is treating you, because IMF astoundingly keeps on asking you for impossibly, unpopular policies, and even then it is still dragging its feet. So the argument was that, of course, at this moment it is not the board which is doing it, right? It is the bureaucracy of IMF which is dragging its feet, because before you actually present your case before a board, there has to be a staff level agreement. And in that, they actually remind you that the current team, or at least the head of the current team, that is Deputy MD, is a holdover from Trumpian era, when the chief economist had immediately resigned for some unknown reason, and an Indian lady of Indian origin, Geeta Gopinath, was actually first made chief economist, and then now she is the deputy MD, and but she is actually controlling the outcome and atmospherics. Now the question is India playing any role? India has nothing to gain from the rise of Imran Khan. So who else might be doing it? Remember, America itself does not gain anything out of that kind of a situation, and it is doubling down on cooperating with Pakistan. Your next topic is one of the
Yes.
proofs that that is so. So who might it be? The holdovers of Putin, Trumpian, I'm told,
Yeah.
world order, that actually want people who were friendly towards Trump and Putin to rise again, and that's what this kind of concessions are being asked. And because it is impossible, IMF will keep on dragging its feet, and if it does, this government will start actually collapsing, and
Right.
this is the hope.
Right. Barrister Safi, you can add to that as well, but I also have a quick question, since we are short on time, in terms of the request or the demand by the PTI chairman of the Toshakhana reference case to be televised as well, and that is something that is important to the case and for the facts to come out. Why is it that this particular demand exists in this case, and then whether or not this is something that that can be a norm in terms of the cases to go forward, because of course the proceedings are as they are, and is this something that is just being demanded to get some political mileage out of it, or do you think that the case necessitates it?
Great question, Sana. And Imran Khan's demand, though illegal and though uh, something that the Pakistani constitution does not provide for, is something that I actually support. I do believe that court cases should be televised. This has been a debate with the Supreme Court Council, in the Supreme Court, in the High Courts, time and again, and not just in Pakistan, world over. Pakistan and the Pakistani courts thought that televising debates, televising live cases would subject them to contempt, because people start trying to place pressure on judges, and so they removed all of this. But there are many cases which are public televised. Probably watch a lot of US trials that go publicly live, and everybody sees how the judges react. So frankly, I am of the opinion that in this day and age, it is a good idea to televise cases. And if this can lead to greater justice, so be it. I don't see any issue with that. If you recollect, there was a time when they put up cameras in the Rawalpindi district courts, and during that time, it is said that the disposal of cases went up, and the overall demeanor of um, the plaintiffs and the defendants and everything improved substantially. And there was also a lot of live evidence whenever somebody misbehaved with the judges. So it's something that can actually assist the courts rather than hamper them. So here's one
Okay.
place where I would actually agree with him. Good idea.
All right. All right. Rana Sahab, considering the fact that the elections are also going to be held in KP and Punjab, and the former Prime Minister is, of course, talking about his campaigns, and then he's dealing with all of these cases. He had a jail baro tehreek which he abandoned in light of the Supreme Court's ruling. There is a lot of movement in terms of what the PTI wants to see in the next coming days and months. But what is the way forward for the current political setup and the government as well? in line with the way that these cases are going ahead and what the PTI then claims, because there is what we were talking about in terms of the ruckus or the mass movement that can take place. There is the legal proceedings, and then there is a very volatile economic situation as well. So what do you see in terms of what is going to be happening now in KP and Punjab in light of these legal cases? Rana Saab, can you hear me? Rana Saab, are you
Yes,
with
I
us?
can hear you.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yes, uh, I don't know what's going to happen because the situation is very unpredictable. You might have listened to Maulana Fazlur Rahman and other leaders as well on elections. So there is still a syndrome of uncertainty about the elections. The picture is not clear, despite the Supreme Court verdict, to which people have different opinions. The most important issue is the provision of resources. Once the finances are not available, so to say, and the personnel, as we understand, are not being provided, they can't afford to provide the requisite personnel. Identically, there is no clearance about the provision of returning officers. So there are not many hazards so far. So one can't say what's going to happen. But all the same, if it happened, the government, especially PML, and they are ready. They have announced time and again they'll get into the election arena. Their movement, mobilization movement, is already there. They are holding the convention, meeting the people, talking to the people, getting across to the people. Then people will decide what happens in these two provinces. All the same, there is a very strong opinion in the sensible cadre of all the masters are sensible, but little more aware cadres. They say there should be elections both simultaneously of national assemblies and provincial assemblies. If only provincial assembly elections are held, that will be injurious for the peace of the country. So all
Right.
these situations are in the melting pot, and still the final decision has to come up.
Absolutely, there is a lot of uncertainty. Thank you very much, Rana Saab, and thank you, Barrister Safi, for joining us. Yes, Farooq.
Right. Regarding the conduct of elections also, it is said that there is this matter of Ladla playing out. One example is that wherever Imran Khan Sahab wants to actually contest elections,
Right.
there he gets whatever he wants. But there are places where he does not want to. For example, in Rajanpur, there was an election, but the places where he resigned, Imran Khan Sahab keeps saying that his party is very popular, and if elections are held anywhere, he will return to power.
Okay.
Then why is it that his resignations are, he went for a stay on those resignations, and because of that, there is no election there. Had there been an election, we would have known that in urban centers where they have tendered resignation, whether he's going to actually return to be returned to office or not, they could have easily gone through the process and then entered the assembly,
Right.
but they did not. So the system is conceding, and if that is so, there is some lobbying going on behind the scenes.
Right, and something, of course, that we need to consider. Now, of course, there is a lot that is going on in Pakistan besides what is happening in terms of the political arena as well. And, of course, there's huge concern. There is the economic situation, but there's also the surge in terrorist activities in the country, which Pakistan has been dealing with for quite some time, particularly since the Afghan Taliban regime took control in Afghanistan, and then, of course, the end of the ceasefire with TTP. The US cooperation is something that we have been looking forward to. We have the dialogue on counterterrorism that is beginning today. And Farooq, this is important in terms of whether or not we're going to be seeing a restart of the previous strategic cooperation on counterterrorism. The dialogue perhaps may be a welcome step, but what do you foresee in terms of the scale at which we can see this moving forward? Because there are conflicting opinions regarding what the US considers the TTP to be, especially in terms of a threat to the US.
Right. I think the US stance is very clear regarding TTP. They also have included it in the list of proscribed organizations. Many of its leaders were on the list of most wanted terrorists. That is not all. Some of the worst terrorists, like Hakimullah Masood, were killed. by the American drones, not by Pakistani drones or Pakistani activities against in the fight against terrorism. So we are of the same mind. Remember that ISKP is, a very thought to be a very important concern for the U.S. And ISKP, Islamic State for Khorasan province, is essentially a B team in one way or the other of TDP. That whosoever actually is decides to desert it or thinks that TTP is not hard enough, they regroup and they join ISKP. So the US also is concerned about it. And very interestingly, there's another dynamic, Sana, that whenever there is a terrorist attack inside Pakistan and TTP is pressured by Afghan Taliban not to take responsibility or oblique credit for that kind of terrorist attack, then within days or within hours, ISKP steps up the plate and actually starts taking credit for that. Why would that be? There seems to be some pantomime horse-like attitude of these coalition of terrorist organizations that are somehow aligned with Afghan Taliban as well. And that's why the concern is that if these activities are not stopped, then there is going to be some kind of blowback that might actually exceed Pakistan or Afghanistan for that matter.
Okay.
And recently, when our leadership went there, and our defense minister and other leaders, the word has it that the Pakistan actually demanded that something should be done regarding TTP, and Afghan Taliban actually demanded money to relocate them inside Afghanistan so that they don't actually create problem on your borders. And amazingly, so not only you are going to be attacked and we are not going to do anything about it, but also pay us the upkeep for the people who are attacking you as well. Regarding Pakistan and the US relationship and cooperation, the great thing at this moment is that while nobody is calling it strategic dialogue, but it seems that all those components that were there many years ago, they are back. It is important to remember that there is the ongoing cooperation on Pakistan-Afghan border management. And recently, when the US military delegation actually came to Pakistan, they were taken to the border and shown how it is managed, because that is a concern. Pakistan keeps on fencing the border and Afghan Taliban keep on dismantling it. So whatever the concerns are at this moment, TTP and ISKP both are at the top of the list of both Pakistan and the US list of priorities to handle. And then Afghan Taliban are not far behind, because Afghan Taliban don't seem to be playing ball either with Pakistan or the US.
Right, but in terms of what this cooperation can look like, do you see any active involvement by the US, particularly in terms of our defense or military capabilities in the fight against terrorism within Pakistan?
Right, Sana, there are many moving parts to this question. One is, of course, the cooperation between the US and Pakistan that has been going on for quite some time. There was a momentary, moratorium on that during Trump administration's time, when he also tweeted some disparaging tweet against Pakistan, and Nikki Haley was really taking credit for that kind of an attitude. But after that, we have seen that there is a thaw between the US and Pakistan, and the military cooperation has resumed. But having said that, remember that Pakistan is also in a very reactionary part of the world. So every cooperation today, actually, many senators have spoken out demanding the Prime Minister to speak on the joint floor of the Parliament to address the concerns about Pakistan nukes, as if they are under any concern, any protection at all. And secondly, also to actually take into cognizance whether there is any imperialist agreement between Pakistan and the US to undermine China. I mean, come on, but this is the state of paranoia in the air. I earlier actually gave you example of one conspiracy theory. There's the second one. So these things are there, but I'm sure that the US understands how we work. So there's not going to be any demand that Pakistan should actually provide any bases or something of that sort. But over the horizon cooperation between Pakistan and the US, although Pakistan says there's none, and Afghan Taliban keep on insisting that Amal Zawahiri was killed because of this cooperation,
Right.
I would advocate that there should be cooperation of this sort. Because what are Afghan Taliban doing at this moment? While they don't actually show any direct compassion towards New Delhi, but if you are helping people who are undermining us, you are helping our enemies.
Right, of course. And this is something that we definitely will need to encounter and factor in the discussion as we move forward. But thank you, Farooq, for this as well. And of course, in terms of how we proceed, particularly with the US and the fight against terrorism, is also going to largely depend on what we prioritize and what we see as important and what sort of factors and decisions that we take at home as well. That's all that we have from the debate. I will see you with more news tomorrow.